Who are you?
I am Skylar Dennis, and I am a self-taught oil painter, and I enjoy making fantasy
Fantasy portraits, okay.
portraits.
Where were you born?
I was born in small town, Michigan, a little town nobody's heard of, called Manchester. So that means I was technically born in Ann Arbor.
Probably, yeah. There's no hospitals in Manchester.
No.
What was your childhood like?
It was interesting.
Okay.
For sure. I started experiencing some pretty bad traumas from a very early age. There are a lot of things that people don't like to think of were things that I lived through. And as I got older, I started to forget a lot of those memories. And then I hit a certain age around high school where a lot of those memories started to flood back. And I had deluded myself into thinking, nah, I just made it up. My brain is being weird. It just made it up. Not happening. No, I don't want to deal with it. And it just never really left until I came to the conclusion. It was like, yeah, I didn't make that up, did I?
Yeah.
And as life went on, of course, life goes on. And it was just a trauma train, honestly.
Was your childhood all trauma, or?
No, my childhood was not all trauma. There was a lot of trauma. But there are some people in my life where I could go to escape. My abuela being one of them. My grandparents. Even some of my childhood friends, I'd go over to their place for the weekend, and this wasn't until I didn't get to start going to friends' houses until like late elementary, early middle school. So there was a good chunk of time where I was just going back and forth between unstable, rocky home life to sanctuary at my abuela's or my grandma and grandpa's, which meant that those people became very dear and precious to me.
And what inspired you to start creating? What inspired you to start doing art?
Well, I grew up in a creative family. Almost everybody in my family is an artist of some sort. So I was kind of raised in the arts, whether that was music, dance, which I am horrible at.
I disagree.
You're biased. Or wood making, book binding, drawing, painting. Like my mother, she's an amazing painter. I have some paintings of hers around the house. Well, I have one painting of hers around the house because I conned her into having a painting session with me one day, just sitting on the back deck. Well, it was under the back deck, staring out at the field that was behind the house we were living in. And she painted a field, and I have no memory of what I painted. I just know that she also kept it.
Okay.
But it was around the age of 10 where I looked at my mom and was like, what's a more serious type of paint where I could, actually start taking my art seriously. So I was 10 years old when I first started working with oils, because that was the medium of paint. Because like I said, my mom's a painter, and oil paint was her choice of medium. So that's, aside from like the childhood kits of like watercolors and finger paint, that's where it really truly started.
Okay.
And when I first started, I started with landscapes, believe it or not. I don't think I have any of my landscapes anymore. I think the last landscape I truly painted was a gift to my mother, which was a cabin, her dream cabin, which she still doesn't have, but that's why we call it a dream cabin.
Yeah. And how did your art evolve over time? Because I don't see you paint a lot of landscapes anymore.
No. Although landscapes do come in handy for backgrounds.
Of course.
Not that that's a landscape background that I just gestured to.
No, it's not, but...
So over time, the evolution really started to happen when around, like, middle school.
Mm-hmm.
I had put myself in a box, and I didn't allow myself to move outside of that box, which also meant that I couldn't grow as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that with the music I listened to, and with the clothes I wore, and the art I created.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the very beginning of my like personal evolution of my artwork also started with the evolution of me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this started happening shortly after my abuela died. She was a very prominent figure in my life, almost like a second mother to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a cat here at my nose.
That's not where that goes.
It's really not. I blame Loki. But when my abuela passed away, I had actually been working on a landscape painting for her, in oils, of course, as a gift for her for when she got out of the hospital. She was in the hospital with pneumonia for the second time, and the doctors really did not think that she was going to survive. They were amazed that she survived the first time. And she had just turned 70, and I was the only person who believed that she was going to come home. And making that painting was a way of me assuring myself that she was going to come home. And when she didn't, I completely stopped creating. My grief was so heavy that I locked myself in my room for a couple days, and it took me months to even go back and look at the painting that I had been working on, which I did eventually end up finishing. And finishing that painting was the catalyst of me to finally start healing that grief.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also where the beginning of my experimentation began.
Mm-hmm.
I started doing kind of like objects, like singular objects. Like I have this heart with sewed up on my wall. That was one of the few paintings that I did afterwards. That's actually done in watercolor on canvas, which was an experiment because I didn't know I could do it, but I did it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bird on the wall over there. I did that my freshman year of high school, which was quite a few years after my abuela died. This was also the year I took an art class in school, and they didn't let you do just one thing all of the time. And I got very frustrated very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, oh, I hate drawing people. I don't want to do a self-portrait. Why are you making me do a self-portrait? This is so stupid. Why are you making me draw this house? It's so easy. Which is when my teachers realized very quickly that I already had some art skill previously. Mostly thanks to my mom, because she gave me an entire stack of her old art drawing books. And I think what eventually led me to where I am now in my art style, because I've been rambling, is it's a lot easier to convey an emotion through a person or the figment of a person than it is a sunset. Now, don't get me wrong, you can convey a lot of emotion through a landscape if you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't hold the same weight for me anymore. Because when I first started painting landscapes, I was creating a fictitious scene that was supposed to be an escape for me, somewhere I could go hide from the things that were happening in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm older, and as I've grown, my artwork has shifted from the perspective of someone who's trying to escape reality to someone who is trying to use fiction to deal with and explain reality, which from the surface that looks those two statements look very similar. But in practice, it has changed the way I approach my artwork. Because a lot of the times now I'm trying to either figure out a feeling I had while something was going on, or while remembering something, or I'll have a dream about something I experienced, or even just a picture will pop up in my head and it evokes a certain kind of emotion, and then I'll do a rough sketch, and then I'll do a second sketch, and then I'll finally put it on canvas if it makes it past those 2 or 3 stages. Sometimes I'll have to draw it like 5 or 6 times before I'm like certain that I have the composition down or anything. And as I've settled into my style a bit more, I've learned a lot about myself through my artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned about artwork through myself, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yes, it does. Tell us a bit about your faith journey.
My faith.
Yeah.
Ooh. That's an interesting one. So as for my faith, well, you've identified it more, the most specifically I have ever heard someone define my faith.
Mm-hmm.
Normally I just tell people I'm a Norse pagan.
Mm-hmm.
A Lokian heathen
Mm-hmm.
with limited Hellenistic influences.
Yes.
Okay. So, of course, I usually just say I'm a Norse pagan that also worships Loki. Worship is a very strong word, but way back when I was kind of raised in a household where religion went when needed. It was always Christian and God and everything, but it was more of like you prayed when you needed something. To this day, I'm still trying to learn how to pray properly within my faith.
Mm-hmm.
So that means I've mostly leaned into candle work and meditation as my form of praying. But my abuela, however, she was as devout a Catholic, I believe she was. As a devout Catholic as you can get without actually going to church. Yeah, so she had been divorced a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
and it was around then that she left the church, to my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, around the time when I had come along, she had already been married to my Pop Ted, and counting all up until her death, they had been together for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't meet until much later in life.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever I would ask her questions, she would always point me towards God, especially if it was a philosophical question
Mm-hmm.
from, like, a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
She got me, like, one of those, like, mini kid Bibles and everything, and if I'm being completely honest with you, I just flipped through and looked at the pretty pictures.
Yeah.
But there was always that presence, and after she passed, I had already been through a lot of things, not just the loss of her, but I had lost some other family members. I had survived some pretty serious, and it was at that point where my brain was just kind of like, something's not clicking here. Something's it's one of those things that I can't really put into words.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a good period of time where I had like one of those like little pocket Bibles
mm-hmm.
that my mom bought me at a fair.
Mm-hmm.
And through the process of grieving my abuela, I tried to read the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But I swear they shrunk the text with the size.
They do that, yeah.
Which means, as someone who is usually crying while trying to read the Bible, that didn't go too well.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really got past the Lord's Prayer.
Mm-hmm. And
I had memorized it at one point,
mm-hmm.
and I would recite it every night before I went to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I lost my Bible. I have no idea what happened to it. But it happened around the time where I wasn't reciting the prayer as much. I was really just doing it as a way to try and stay connected with my abuela. Like, it didn't feel real to me, but it was the faith that she had practiced. Mm-hmm. So I gave it a try to at least have some kind of connection with her still. Mm-hmm. And it was not working for me. And I know you believe in the mystical side of like ghosts and spirits and all of that. And it was also around this time where me and my mom were living with her boyfriend at the time, mm-hmm. In a really large house. It was extremely haunted. Like, I remember my bed shaking. I swear there were a couple times where it lifted off the ground while shaking. My bed used to get shoved from one side. And keep in my bed was in the corner. So there was a wall here and there was a wall here. But my mom made me have like a little bit of space between the bed and the wall on this side, mm-hmm. because I needed to be able to make my bed. Around the age of like, once I became a teenager, I just stopped making my bed. Mm-hmm. And
typical teenage behavior.
Yeah. And she was never in my room, so I didn't care. But there was still that space there because I was too lazy to move my bed back up against the wall. And this space was probably like only like this big, like this. And it would get shoved from one side, and it was always the side my back was facing. So when one side got shoved, I'd roll over so my back was facing the other, so I could be facing the danger. And then it would get shoved from the other side, and it would just go back and forth the entire night. I slept like not at all. And then there was one night where, you know, like in movies where they like portray like all of these evil things with like really large, long, slender hands. Mm-hmm. It almost felt like that, but a little more human size. Like, take the size of my hand, make the palm slightly bigger, and make the fingers just a little bit longer, and put like long nails on the end, mm-hmm. essentially. And I just felt that slowly creeping up my leg, starting at my ankle until it got all the way up to like midway through my thigh, before I unfroze, grabbed my abuela's rosary, and just darted into my mom's room. Now, my mom was also experiencing some paranormal things at that time, mm-hmm. To the point where she started putting a camera in her bedroom to film her sleeping. And she captured this dark mist just attacking her ankles and knees at night, and she'd wake up and they'd be swollen and scratched and bruised, and it hurt her to walk. And this went on all until I started practicing my pagan faith, and at this point I was working more with the Greek deities, so Hellenistic deities, and the deities I was working with at that time were Apollo, Hades, Hermes, Athena, Persephone, and Artemis. And I started doing it in secret because I knew nobody in my life would approve. And it didn't necessarily stop, but it lessened. My bed no longer shook. My bed no longer rose. I didn't get those hands grabbing me or going up my legs anymore. My bed would still get shoved, though. All up until, like, the last couple months I lived there, where I had kind of figured out, like, charm prayer speaking things. I don't know what it's called, but it's I treated it like a prayer, and I said it whenever I got scared, or whenever I was nervous, or whenever I felt like there was an unsettling presence around me. And I would say it then. I would sing pagan hymns while I was in the shower, because the flowing water has like a magical energy to it. It's a power in of its own self. Even most religions will consider flowing water holy in some kind of sense. To my understanding, at least.
Even Jews practice ritual immersion in a living body of water. They call it a mikveh. That's a very old practice.
Yeah, so I would sing in the shower, like, these protection hymns about, like, nature and great spirits and everything, just... And it stopped. I had, like, this aura of peace around me. And then I learned how to alter these prayers to include other people around me, or my general vicinity, and those who are within it. And suddenly, their lives started improving as well. And I strongly believe that in order to strengthen my faith, I need to learn more about it, which is, towards these days, I've leaned a lot more towards the Norse deities. I can't tell you exactly what caused that shift. It's just another one of those feelings that I can't explain. But there are a couple of Greek deities that I still hold very closely to, and that is Hades and Persephone. Hermes on some accounts, but mostly Hades and Persephone. But now I mostly work with Freya, Loki, and Tyr. And Fenrir, in some sense.
Really?
On my altar, I have that wolf cup with those fox bones in it that I use for divination.
Gotcha, okay.
And that is my representation of Fenrir, which I have above Tyr, above Tyr's little area, and right next to Loki's candle stand.
Oof.
Yep. It's probably not the best placement, but I don't know. It was instinctual.
What encouraged you to incorporate Fenrir? What about Fenrir speaks to you?
This is something that me and my mom both share. Not that she's probably aware of the Fenrir thing. But we both are obsessed with wolves. So naturally, when I started learning about Norse mythology, I was immediately drawn to Fenrir. Just because, big floofy, I want to pet. If you have a wolf on your side, there's no way you're going to lose, right? Figuratively speaking. I don't know. Some people might say I was raised by wolves, but well, yeah. Okay. But no, Fenrir specifically, he never really begins an evil. in a sense. It was his size that Odin feared. And because he grew into such greatness, the gods feared him and wanted to control him, essentially, even though he had never done them any kind of wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyr, being god of justice, and knowing that the gods were trying to trick him, I'm speaking to you as if everybody knows the story.
That's the best way to tell the story.
So because the gods feared him so much, they challenged him to break out of these chains because they wanted to bind him. And he was able to break out of every single set of chains that they put him in. And they finally caved and cheated to have the golden set of chains that were impossible to break.
Mm-hmm.
And they wrap him in them. And he only agrees to do this because he sensed that something was off if one of the gods would put their hand in his mouth. So that if he could not break free, he was going to bite down on their hand and basically eat their hand.
Yeah.
Which, considering the circumstances, is fair. And even though Tyr knew that they were tricking him, knowing what the end result was going to be, for what he believed was going to be for the greater good, personally, I don't even think that he thought it was for the greater good. He was mostly just following orders from Odin. He stuck his hand in Fenrir's mouth when no one else would. And when the inevitable happened, he wasn't even able to be angry with Fenrir. And it is said that when Ragnarok comes along, Fenrir will finally break from his chains, and he will be the one to kill Tyr. Which, after millennia of being trapped and tricked by someone you had once considered to be a very good friend of yours, kind of inevitable that is going to happen. That's one of the things that I find fascinating about Norse mythology, is that it's just a big... Norse mythology focuses very heavily on cycles, the beginning and ending of things. It applies to life very well. And Ragnarok is the greatest example of this, where even Ragnarok is not the complete end. It is an end in order to begin anew.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone in their lifetime experiences a Ragnarok moment. Like that big defining moment that's either going to completely destroy you as a person, and you'll carry on being destroyed forever, or you'll come up out of the ashes, be reborn as a person, and start from scratch. Because after Ragnarok, the world is reborn. Some of the old gods are reborn. Baldur comes back after Ragnarok. And so do a couple of other gods. And they rebuild the world. So even the greatest tragedy of the gods is not truly an end, and it shows how the world carries on, which I personally find very beautiful as someone who has suffered through a lot of trauma.
You've had quite a few Ragnaroks.
I have had quite a few Ragnaroks, but I think I'm finally on... I'm praying I'm finally on the other side of my final Ragnarok.
Mm-hmm.
Although there will probably be many more.
Well, just don't be an Odin about it.
No, I'm...
And how, if at all, would you say your faith has informed your art?
Heavily.
Heavily?
Heavily. To use the piece behind me as an example, even, I have. You can't really see it because I just did a glazing over it.
Yeah.
But I have tattoos.
We'll see it in the final.
Yeah. I have tattoos sketched into the side of the character's head and on their back, kind of to mimic some of the tattoos that I personally want to get and already have. But some of them are transliterated from English into Elder Futhark, which is the runes that Odin found or discovered when he was hanging from the tree. And some of them are just translated. So on the shoulders, you're not going to be able to see the full word. But on facing this way, the left shoulder, he has, where is it? Shoot. The word past, or Uder, the name of one of the Norns, on his left shoulder, and Skuld on his right shoulder,
Future.
which means future and is the name of one of the other Norns. There's 3 Norns, but I chose to exclude present because I wanted it to be the weight of the past, the weight of the future.
Oh, okay.
Then on the side of the skull, I transliterated the word. It's either defend or defender. I can't quite remember anymore because I can't quite see it correctly right now.
Yes.
And I have a sword coming down the right arm with a snake wrapping around from the wrist going all the way up. And I haven't quite decided whether I want to keep it as a snake or if I want to change it into a dragon. I'm kind of thinking of keeping it as a snake, though, to represent Jormungandr, the world serpent, who eventually ends up killing Thor, and Thor kills Jormungandr. It's a dual killing. They just basically fight each other until the other can't fight anymore. And these tattoos on the bottoms, you can't see this anymore because I just went over it, but it's fire and vines starting at the base of the feet and running upwards. So it's kind of like foot in life and death, destruction and creation, chaos and calm, or life and death, which are 2 polarities that are played around with a lot. You could even go as far as to say Midgard or Asgard and Helheim, even though Helheim is a world of ice. A lot of people think of Helheim and think of fire and brimstone because of the Christian hell. Even though that has 2 L's, and Helheim, who is ruled by the goddess Hel, which is also a child of Loki, is spelled with 1 L.
Yes. Okay, so what are some projects that you're working on right now? What are some things you're involved with?
Well, I am currently working on this really big piece. The placeholder name I've come up with it is Self-Sacrifice, although I've come up with better names when I'm right about to go to sleep and can't remember them when I wake up.
It'll get workshopped.
It most definitely. But for now, the placeholder is Self-Sacrifice. And I'm planning on putting more runes and graffiti on the walls after I finish painting in the person. I'm currently working on some mini ACOs. I've skipped the last couple of days because I haven't been feeling all that well. I'm still kind of recovering. But I've mostly been trying to do like 4 to 5 like mini ACOs, and those are like 2 inches by 3 inches. They're essentially artist trading cards.
Okay.
And I've been using that as like a way to warm up in the morning, and to experiment because I got these like really amazing wash paints for Christmas from my mom, and they've been in a drawer since. I'm sorry, Mom, but that's where they ended up. I know I asked for them, but I really haven't had time to play around with them. So I decided to sit down and make time to not just play around with a different medium, but to have it be like a good warm-up before I start working on the big painting. It's a nice way for me to wake up. I'll sit down with a cup of coffee, paint like 4 or 5 ACAOs. Is that thunder? And then it's also a great way for me to experiment with my style, because when I first started settling into my style, it was a lot of like blending and what's the word? I want to say ombre. I don't think that's right. When one color fades into another.
You would know better than I do.
Shoot. I'm a painter, now a poet.
Oh man, I'm a poet, not a painter.
Forget the word.
We get the concept. That's the important part.
Yeah, and I would like. It was kind of a mix. My Medusa painting. Pan Lost to Time is a great example of where I was finding my style and settling into like the fantasy portraits with mythology and my faith heavily entwined. That one's actually a really heavy piece, but I haven't had a lot of time to like explore the. It was almost like a pointillism type of style, especially for that painting specifically. Whenever I'm dealing with like water or clouds or mist or anything, I tend to use like a very blended pointillism style. With pointillism, you can see the individual dots. The whole point of pointillism is that it's made up of individual dots, varying in color, weight, or darkness, lightness. A very similar thing can be achieved with cross-hatching. Or breathing lines, as you see in that painting there from my college class. Drawing. Which I've incorporating some of these little things that I haven't had, like, opportunities to, like, practice with or play with in these little ACO paintings. Mm. Like, I've been doing, like, some line work. I haven't done line work in years. I'm relearning to enjoy line work. Selective line work is something that I've been playing around with a lot with in the sky paintings specifically. Mm-hmm. I love painting the sky. I love painting skies, the clouds specifically, because for me, at least, clouds, like the lying back and watching the sky is very reminiscent of those quiet moments where you're by yourself, you're at peace, your mind is quiet, and you're just sitting there finding shapes in the sky, watching the birds, and for a moment it's like everything just kind of fades away. So in a sense, when I'm painting these skies or these ACOs, it's me capturing the quiet moments in between, while my big paintings, like this one, is me confronting the moments that are hard to deal with head on. And that's that's the trauma itself, that's the fighting through the trauma, that's the fighting to be heard, that's fighting with yourself over what happened, the survivor's guilt, the process of even trying to begin healing, the beginning of the healing process, and every single setback that comes along the way, because there's always at least one setback when you're trying to heal or recover from something. And sometimes those setbacks, depending on what you're healing from, can feel heavier than what you're healing from to begin with. In my experience, at least. And I know a few people who agree with me. And yes, it's important to face those things head on in a way that is healthy, which is why I paint them. But it's also important to acknowledge those serene, quiet moments in between. And that's why I've been trying so hard to create myself a serene, quiet moment in the morning where I'm sitting down with my coffee. Sometimes I have my earbuds in, listening to some music.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's lo-fi music.
That's the good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Or, like, fantasy tavern music, because I've been on that stuff recently. Just sitting there with my cup of chocolate milk coffee. And I'll whip out, like, 4 or 5 of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really enjoying them. I do have some other big projects that I am planning. One of them is a lot more fantasy related. It's less confronting like trauma and everything, and more delving into the fantasy. I might not actually put it on a big canvas, but it's something I've been working on. I might put it on a little canvas, just because I think it's cool.
It's one of those serene, quiet moments.
Yeah, it's not even the serene, quiet moment. It's a tavern. It's a tavern painting, with a lot of characters inspired from some of my favorite fantasy media, like Lord of the Rings, or books that I've read. It's also heavily inspired by D&D. Hi, Loki.
Being colonized.
Aww. Something I'll also do is I am a photographer by no means.
Mm-hmm.
That honor goes to my Aunt Val. But something I do like to do for myself is I'll take photos when I'm out on a walk. Creating myself another one of those like quiet moments,
Mm-hmm.
And I'll see something, I'll take a picture of it, and I'll edit the photo a little bit, because maybe I'll be able to use it as a reference photo later on. And sometimes I'll be able to just save it and use it as like an inspiration piece. Like, maybe I'll use a similar lighting or backdrop as that as that photo in a painting. This is why I'm not a poet. I normally never even share those online, but I like them. I should create a whole folder on my phone for them. Lord knows I have so many of them.
Okay. What are a handful of pieces that you're particularly proud of, or they have particular depth to you, like their meaning to you?
Ooh.
Like, I know you mentioned just a bit ago that Pain Lost to Time was a very heavy painting. What did you mean by heavy?
It deals with some very heavy trauma. So as I said earlier, Pain Lost to Time is my Medusa piece.
Mm-hmm.
And Medusa is one of those figures from mythology that I connect to a lot. The Greeks didn't really even bother to give her a backstory. She was just this big, bad Gorgon that Perseus had to kill. And that's the extent of it. The Romans, however, fleshed her out a little bit more. And there's been some debate on the backstory.
Yes.
And it's in situations like that where, especially in the modern age, people will be very picky and choosy
Mm-hmm.
about which story they choose to believe. I'm not saying I'm any different, because I do have a favorite story. Everybody has a favorite story.
Mm-hmm.
But so the most popular story is that, and this is a very heavy trigger warning because it deals with sexual assault, is that Medusa was not always a Gorgon. She was, in fact, a high priestess in Athena's temple.
Mm-hmm.
One of Athena's favorite priestesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you say that word, right?
Yes.
Okay. And she had caught the eye of Poseidon because Medusa was a very beautiful woman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, something that's important to note is that there's two very important things to note here. Athena is one of the 3 maiden goddesses in Greek mythology.
Mm-hmm.
So that those 3 are Athena, Hestia, and Artemis. Yeah. And so that means to be a high priestess of any of those 3 goddesses, you also have to take a vow of chastity.
Mm-hmm.
Or to be a maiden forever. To never lie with a man.
Mm-hmm.
And Athena and Poseidon don't get along at all. It is not a happy story at all. It's horrendous. And this is where the story starts to differ. In some stories, they say that Medusa was also falling for Poseidon. In some stories, they say that she was completely unwilling and stayed true and begged for Athena's help through the entire time that Poseidon was taking her.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people say that she had seduced Poseidon. But in all of the stories, it happened in Athena's temple.
Hmm.
And depending on which story you're going with, Athena's reaction is different. In some stories, Athena gets angry both at Poseidon and Medusa. And in some stories, Athena takes pity on Medusa because Athena is also seen as the goddess of beaten women and the women who have suffered. She's a protector of women in general. And depending on which story it is, either she changes Medusa into a Gorgon as punishment or as a way to protect her from further assault. Because, as it's said, whenever a man makes eye contact with Medusa, he will turn to stone. Not a woman. It only applies to men. Which leads me to believe that my favorite story, I should say, is that it was 100% an assault, and Medusa was completely not willing, and that she stayed devout to Athena the entire time. And Athena got there, shoot off Poseidon like the scum that he is, and I'm sorry to anybody who worships Poseidon, but he's greasy, and took pity on Medusa, turned her into a Gorgon, so that no man could ever violate her again. And it is even the depth of this story that, for those who understand the story of Medusa, especially in the modern age, where she's kind of become the symbol for those who have survived sexual assault. Such a heavy painting. And this is one of those paintings where I wanted to capture a serene moment in times of heaviness. And as someone who has suffered through such things, it was very important for me to capture a moment of after and in between. And what I mean by that is just like the painting process, in which it's very layered, the healing process, and the grief that comes with something like this is also very layered. So in the painting, I show Medusa in a serene and quiet environment where she's laid back, eyes closed, mouth closed, under the surface of a river with lily pads and like petals flowing around her on the water surface. And the snakes in her hair are just kind of swimming around. Some of them are poking up over the water, checking out what's going on. But she herself is in a moment of quiet. And I like to imagine that this is a moment of in-between, after she left Athena's temple, because she had to leave Athena's temple, and in between her murder. What's really twisted about the story of Medusa is that when Zeus, who is the father of Perseus, sent Percy to kill Medusa as this impossible trial, he had Athena help Percy by giving him her shield as a reflector, so he wouldn't have to look her in the eyes to find where she was. And I also chose to portray Medusa in some very simple priestess wear. If you look closely at the painting, you can see the gold band that was traditionally worn, at least I found traditionally worn by Greek priestesses. She's still wearing a robe. Now, my detailing skill wasn't as good as it is now, so I kept it fairly simple. I found some designs from artwork, like traditional, like old Greek artwork of priestesses, and I simplified it, and that's what she is wearing. And it's layered in a way of yes, she is in a serene, quiet moment for herself between some very heavy traumas, but she is also in a position where she can't breathe. She is submerged under the water surface. Granted, she is just underneath the surface, but a lot of the times that's what healing feels like, especially from something so atrocious, is you look calm and collected on the outside, but inside you're dying, you're suffocating, because a lot of the times you're trying to figure it out on your own. A lot of people don't even go and try and seek therapy. Some of them are lucky enough to be able to go get therapy and get help working through that. Personally, I wasn't. And so it's been years of me figuring things out and just putting things back together. And her story is also a great way of saying, yeah, she's still the same person that she was before it happened, but she is fundamentally changed, and that is shown visually by Athena turning her into a Gorgon, which I find is a very heavy metaphor. That is one that I connect with emotionally very, very heavily. And then, as for some of my other pieces, there's Reborn is honestly probably one of my favorites. It's one of the first almost realistic self-portraits I've done, where it's not really even a self-portrait. I was just kind of using a photo of myself as a reference to get the anatomy right, but it's still close enough to be considered a self-portrait, if that makes any sense. And once again, I based a lot of the tattoos off of Norse mythology. He has some alchemy symbols. A lot of the tattoo design is based on tattoos I want or already have. And for me, the title, Reborn, is pretty significant, because I did take a mix of Norse and Greek mythology. So for me, it's kind of like he came from something old and is rising into something new, kind of like a phoenix. So he's kind of like an embodiment of the phoenix with the flame mohawk and holding the fire in his hands, like just kind of staring at it with like his really piercing blue eyes. So for me, that's kind of a piece about kind of emerging out of hellfire and learning how to use it as a tool for yourself. Not in like a malicious way, but in like using it in a way to help you become stronger. So where it, instead of tearing you down, you come out of it stronger.
The only way out of hell is through.
Yeah. And then there's... I go back and forth on whether I like this next piece or not. Sometimes, not even gonna lie. Which is probably gonna surprise you, but it's self-reflection.
Really?
Yeah. And this painting started out as kind of a bit of an experiment. I used so many different mediums in the making of this painting. It is, to date, the biggest painting I've ever made. And, but yeah, self-reflection, I used so many different painting things and techniques on it. It started out as a base sketch in alcohol-based markers. And then it originally was just the top half of the portrait. And that was with the halo. I was originally planning on just doing a big painting of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I made it too small. Because I didn't scale it properly. Because it was the biggest piece I've ever worked on to date still. And I was still figuring things out. And I decided that I was going to do a polarity thing, kind of like a card deck, and have a similar portrait, but not quite the same, which is also a self-portrait. This painting is also a self-portrait, but of a much younger version of me. Because
Sounds like you need some more reference pictures.
But I had taken these photos of myself for reference pictures back when I was in high school. And I forgot about them in the void. Until I was scrolling through some of my old pictures, I found them and I was like, oh, idea! And so I used reference pictures from that same photo shoot as polarity reference pictures. Mm-hmm. So on the top half, I have the one that's, I think it's going like this.
Yes.
Cupping the face mm-hmm. with the halo. And mm-hmm. then on the bottom, I have the one that's grabbing the neck mm-hmm. Without as much of a halo underneath. And it's like the one above is supposed to represent your higher self, coming into the other side of healing, like resonating with your mortal self and the divine, and the reflection, which I ended up turning into like a dark water, was supposed to be a reflection of the inner shadow, the battles that you'll deal with while recovering, and the relapses, and every setback, all of the dark whisper in your ear, the intrusive thoughts, everything, all of the inner darkness that's constantly choking you. And it's showing that they balance each other out.
As above, so below.
Yes.
It's a Gnostic idea.
And I have it in a galaxy sense. Now, see, the thing that I don't like about this painting is, because I used so many different mediums, personally, I can see where one medium ends and the next begins. So for the background, I used acrylic paint. And like I said, I did the base sketch in acrylic marker. And before I even put acrylic paint down, I tried to cover the back in charcoal, because I have this powdered charcoal that my mom gifted me. And I was trying to play with it, and it was not sticking. And then I tried watering it down with water, and it was sticking, but it wasn't as opaque as I wanted it. And then I tried spray painting it, and then I couldn't breathe. And so then I finally settled on acrylic paint.
Mm-hmm.
But because I was so nervous about going over the sketch that I had done in the marker, I didn't go all the way to the sketch like I should have. And then I went over everything with oil paint.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I originally did acrylic paint is because it dries matte really well, and I want it to be a matte background. Oil paint, there's usually going to be a little bit of a gloss, and you can see that with where there's oil paint, and then there's acrylic, and then there's oil paint, and then there's acrylic, and then I went over everything with paint marker for the halo, and then I went over it with the calligraphy ink, like the silver one of these.
Mm-hmm.
And the portrait part, I absolutely love. But it's where I can see the lines of all of the different medium, especially if you have the light behind it. If you ever put a light behind that painting, I will cringe. Because I can see all of the different mediums that did not mix together. So it was a learning point for me.
It was an experiment.
It was an experiment. And I, to this day, cannot tell whether I succeeded or failed, especially since I lost the painting.
Personally, I loved that piece. It's in a top 4 for me.
Really?
Yeah. No, I won't give you the rest of the list.
Darn it. And then if I'm gonna throw another one in there, I do also really like Embrace of the Mother Divine.
I also love that piece.
That was one of the paintings I did right after Pain Lost to Time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how, but for some reason, I did not connect the dots with the title and how I have the painting that it looks like the Virgin Mary. Because I was just thinking of my abuela. My abuela used to have this portrait
mm-hmm.
back from when she was in her 20s that someone had done for her,
mm-hmm.
wearing traditional like Indian chief clothes. She was Mexican and Indian,
mm-hmm.
and I don't know what tribe. I have no clue. She never told me, and it kind of makes me think that she didn't know. But
a lot of people who are American Indian who assimilated don't remember the tribe. It's only the people who stayed on the reservations, or a handful of families for whom it's a point of pride, kind of like the Irish and Scottish clans who live in America. But like me, for example, I'm Irish. I can guess what clan I came from, but it's never going to be more than a guess.
Yeah, but so she was wearing these traditional clothes, and it's just her stone face looking outward. And she had never cut her hair up until like shortly before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And in the painting, which I'm assuming was also an oil painting, her hair goes way past the end of the portrait, and she told me that it went all the way down to her ankles. And looking at old pictures from when I was like 4 or 5 years old of me and her like sitting on the couch and sharing an ice cream cone, her hair went all the way down to her waist.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how long I made the woman's hair in the painting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a woman holding a baby in one arm, reaching up to a single star in one on like a very purpley night with mist surrounding it, and she's a statue on top of a fountain.
Yes.
You can't really see the fountain that well because it blends into the mist around it. That was on purpose. Because I wanted it to seem like the mist was coming from behind, from like out of nowhere, engulfing the fountain and being added to by the fountain from like the heat and mist that was rising out of it. Which means you also can't see the ground that is around it, so it just kind of looks like it's sitting on clouds. Mm-hmm. And I personally also really love that painting because it does remind me of my abuela. And my abuela also really loved the Virgin Mary. Mm-hmm. When she was in the hospital, she had a Virgin Mary blanket that she kept with her. And I actually have that blanket. Yeah.
You do?
I do. I still have it.
You'll have to show me that sometime.
I will. Yeah, I think out of the pieces I can think of right now, those are probably my favorites.
Okay. That's a good idea. I need a soda. I'm gonna go get me a soda. I'm also gonna turn the air conditioner back on because it's too warm in here now.
No, I didn't click start. I didn't click. We're going on a trip in our favorite rocket ship. That is fantasy portraits. Because I was doing it in the kitchen, it was in the butter, and we had to throw the butter away.
That's what happened to that stick of butter. You didn't tell.
That's why I threw it away.
I'm just whining at the camera.
Oh, is that still playing?